Joielle and her family's inspirational journey was brought to our attention by Alan Bean Burpee and Jackie St. Pierre. Alan is Maine Behavioral Health Care's Director of Case Management, and Jackie is a case manager with our Behavioral Health Homes program and works out of our Springvale clinic. Jackie and other MBH care team members have partnered with Joielle and her family on their path forward for more than a decade. As a wife and a mother, Joielle has been the family's determined quarterback in seeking solutions and care for a variety of significant behavioral health challenges facing her husband and 3 of their children since they were a young couple just starting their family. I am proud of the role Maine Behavioral Health Care has played through our services in case management, psychiatry, and therapy for adults and children that has enabled Joielle to be here with us today, sharing her family's remarkable journey. I thank Joielle and each of you for joining us this evening. Please enjoy her remarks and the rest of the program.
My name is Joielle Lunny. I am from Springvale, and I am married to my husband Michael, and we have 4 amazing children together. Sorry, I've got braces, so my speech is a little it's different. So we have 4 children together, and he has a daughter that he brought along to our relationship. Michael is 23, Emma is 22, Abigail is 17, and Matthew is 16, and Carissa is 26. When I met Michael, I didn't know where our life was going to go, but Maine Behavioral Health has been a part of our family for the past 22 years, with psychiatric services, individual therapy, case management, medication management, nurse care management, family peer support, home and community treatment, and crisis services. In 1999, I was 22 years old and Michael was 25. I was 4 months pregnant with our first child together, and we were both working full-time jobs, and Mike was having regular visits with his daughter. At approximately the end of May that year, I noticed some things that were changing for Mike. I would come home from work and my TV would be unplugged, my phone would be unplugged, my computer would be unplugged. At 22 years old, I was like, it's kind of weird, but I don't know. He would make statements that were confusing, and I would just think, I don't know what that means. And then one day, he dropped me off at work, and he didn't come back to pick me up. And I thought, this is weird and strange. And I got a ride home, and my car was in my driveway, and Mike was nowhere to be found. And having thought a few of the statements that he had been making over the time, I thought, okay, I know where he is. And sure enough, I found him in line to get on the boat to go to Canada, which was very strange considering that part of his fear at that time was people of French heritage. And I thought, okay, so I got on the boat with him and we went through the night, and the Scotia ferry goes 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and I spent that 12 hours trying to figure out how to keep him on the boat, and I was not successful. And he got off the boat, and I came back home because I am the least spontaneous person you will ever meet. And I couldn't see myself wandering around Canada. So I came home and he stayed, and eventually throughout that week, Mike ended up in the Canadian hospital, and they diagnosed him with schizophrenia. While he was in the hospital in Canada, I began making phone calls. I would call lots of people trying to figure out, what does schizophrenia mean? What does this mean for him? And luckily I was able to call Maine Medical Center and speak to a psychiatrist who told me what it meant and what it would look like for Mike when he came home. And at that time, I began looking for services, and we found Abraham Volunteers in Portland. I'm sorry, didn't know I wasn't speaking into the microphone. Once he came home after a week of hospitalization in Canada, and we won't really talk about the fact that his parents broke him out on a day pass and brought him back. we were able to connect him with Ingraham volunteers and Dr. Price there, who did an amazing job of teaching Mike what it meant to have schizophrenia and what it meant for his future going forward and medications. And we started learning about things like case management, and it was a lot of people that I thought were going to be into our lives. And here was my husband, who was 6'5", and this beautiful man who just was lost inside his head, and he wasn't able to get his thoughts out. And so we started connecting in different ways with journaling, different things that would help him. But the biggest thing was finding a treatment plan and a treatment team that would work with him. And nobody really starts a family thinking that this is how you're gonna go. You're gonna start with a parent who has schizophrenia. We're about to have a baby. What does that mean? So starting the journey with Mike and helping him understand his mental health diagnosis, I began to see the signs of my own severe anxiety and complex PTSD that I had been living with, that came from a childhood of trauma, having a sister with a terminal illness, having parents who were substance abusers, physical abuse in the home, domestic violence. All of those things were there, but you just learn to live with them. And so you learn to live with things that you just don't know are gonna happen. And my sister, who was born with cystic fibrosis, I spent my whole childhood waiting for her to die. And that just really messes with how you develop as a child. So I started experiencing my own anxiety and PTSD symptoms and understanding that they were real things and not something that was just there. Eventually, Mike and I were able to get a Section 8 voucher and move to Sanford. Our son was born in November, and while it was the best moment of my life, it was very scary because I had done the research. I knew that 1 in 5 children of a parent with schizophrenia would develop schizophrenia. And so I was scared, but I decided to wait and see what would happen. We transferred Mike's treatment from Ingraham Volunteers to Counseling Services Incorporated, which was before Maine Behavioral Health. And we started there with many doctors, many case managers, trying to find the right fit. What you know about, or what you might not know about schizophrenia, it is not easy to connect with people. The fear is there all the time. It became part of our daily regimen routine to say reality checking. Mike would say something and I'd say, does that sound like that's true? Does that sound reasonable? Does that sound fair? And he would begin to think, no, that doesn't make much sense. And he would be able to move on with his day. So we worked on doing that a lot, and we worked with case managers who would sign him up for therapy. And he would do all of those things. And we worked with many providers over the 22 years that have been able to recognize what it is like for him. We would climb the stairs at CSI, and we would sit with the receptionists, and the treatment teams would come in and out, and our son would be there, and he would entertain everybody, and we would go down the stairs, and we would go about our day. And Mike was able to get into a medication regimen that worked for him, stabilized his paranoia, and eventually we would add more children to our house. We would have 3 more children after Michael, and we would work to keep track of the things that were going on. And I would constantly be thinking, is this normal? Is this how a child should develop? And luckily for us, our children hit every development in every way, and they did amazing things as toddlers, because you're a parent, you think your children are amazing. Eventually CSI would become Maine Behavioral Health. Mike and I would add the 3 more children. I would earn my degree in mental health and human services. I would also earn my master's degree in counseling. I would have many jobs, including a children's services coordinator at a domestic violence agency, an education technician in the elementary school, and eventually my own practice as a therapist. But each job would be good for a few years, and then we would see an increase in Mike's symptoms, and it would become harder to hold a job and help keep him on the right side of his diagnosis. Mike has only ever been hospitalized once in 1999, and we have been able to keep him out of hospitalizations and going forward safely. And that has been with the help of his case managers and his psychiatric treatment. At one point, it became necessary for myself to seek counseling treatment, and the first place I looked was Maine Behavioral. I met my therapist, Dorothy Mealy, there, and would see her consistently for 5 years. She would teach me tools to utilize in dealing with my everyday stressors and coping with the unpredictability of Mike's illness. And then there were the kids. Mike and I knew early on our youngest son, Matthew, had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. We knew he was gonna need some kind of medication at some point. We let it ride out. Eventually, we started medication with his physician, and then we started case management with Maine Behavioral. And that was when Jackie entered our life. She was the first person that I was able to rely on and who would convince me to ask for help when I needed it. She allowed me to see that I didn't have to shoulder all the responsibility of helping my family all by myself. Jackie has been with us for the past 10 years, and with case management, that is very unusual. It is. You have case managers that come and go, but Jackie has been with us through everything. And my children have put her through the paces over the years. If you're unsure what case management looks like, here's what she has experienced with us. Both Emma and Abigail were diagnosed with anxiety and eventually ADHD. Abby developed bulimia at the start of COVID, and Matthew was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder along with his ADHD. Jackie has initiated and attended individualized education and 504 plan meetings, in the school system, psychiatric evaluations, 1 hospitalization for Matthew, a partial hospitalization program for Abby, helped me establish Maine Behavioral Health Professional, BHP services, which is Behavioral Health Professional Services. Sat outside Abby's bedroom door and encouraged her to go to school when she was refusing to go in the middle school years. And she went rounds with our doctor at the time, Dr. Grappentine, when he questioned, in not so many words, why does she need to go to school? I don't know. Jackie made sure we had food when my employment ended, found resources to keep us moving forward, and always had the best interests of not just my children, but our family as a whole. Jackie collaborated with Cheryl Demers on the crisis team to help Matt find a placement inpatient to treat his OCD. He was able to receive psychiatric services with Dr. Hinkins, who I heard was here. Thank you. After his hospitalization, as well as ongoing psychological services with Dr. Cavish to treat the OCD symptoms. Jackie was an integral part of this process. And one of the more important aspects of the work Jackie has done is that she understood Mike's reluctance to have strangers in our home when she first became our case manager. And she respected his space. She always addressed him, she always included him, but she never forced him to participate when he wasn't ready. Eventually, we would see Mike begin to interact with Jackie more, and then he came to trust her with our children and our space. Dr. Grappentine has been the psychiatrist that we have used the most. He has recently retired, and that has been a loss for our family. But he started treating Mike back probably 10 years ago when Mike was taking a medication that wasn't really working for him, and nobody was really listening when I said, something's wrong. And so we made an appointment with Dr. Grappentine, and we went in and we sat with him, and he listened to not just Mike, but myself and Mike's father, who attended with us. And he asked us, what do you think is happening? And then he made a treatment plan for him. And that treatment plan was one that worked for all of us. And eventually Dr. Grappentine would go on to treating just children. And he sat my husband down and he said, if you'll have me, I'd like to keep you. And that was one of the sweetest things I think I've ever experienced, because here he was going on with other children. And I know he saw other adults, but his job was to treat children. And he respected my husband and understood my husband so much that he kept him with him and on his caseload. Eventually, Mike would develop medication-induced Parkinson's. And it became harder for Dr. G to be able, Dr. G is Dr. Rappaport, for Dr. G to be able to treat him because we weren't sure what medications he was gonna need. And because he was only a child psychiatrist, he couldn't prescribe the needed medications that an adult would need for Parkinson's and those symptoms. So we switched to another provider, Christine McRobbie, who has been a great addition to our team. But during this time, when he was diagnosed with the Parkinson's, he also had some physical health things that were hard to manage. And with that, we had case management with Melanie Dumas, who is an adult case manager. And she worked with us and with Jackie to collaborate and find the things that our family needed to keep Mike going, and to also bring people in, the nursing services that are with Maine Behavioral Home Health Care. And that was Laura Weymouth. And she would help us get the medical equipment that he needed. We worked with everybody in those capacities to make sure that Mike was safe at home. And then having Christine McRobbie, somebody who listens to him, who hears him, and who knows what medications are possibly gonna work well for him. We don't know. It's a gamble. One medication will cause the Parkinson's, but you need that medication to treat the schizophrenia. And it's a fine line to walk, and to have providers who understand what that is and what that means is amazing. All of these people have supported us for the past 22 years, and probably going forward some more. This isn't something that's just gonna end or go away. It's something that we deal with every single day. I am proud to say that today our oldest son, Michael, is a mechanical engineer in Boston who went to Syracuse University on a 4-year Reserve Officer Training Corps scholarship and is a second lieutenant in the Massachusetts National Guard. Emma, who's over there, just graduated with her bachelor's degree from the University of Southern Maine in social work. And she's going to do her master's, wait, I said bachelor's, she's doing her master's degree in the fall in social work, and will be an amazing social worker because she knows and understands the process, the system. She gets it. She stood up with me in front of the Maine legislature and talked about the pressure, the resistance that we were getting with TANF, trying to be at home and take care of my husband, and they were trying to force me to work, and it's a fine line. And Emma stood there and she explained more than I could have what it was like for my husband and for me in our household. Abigail just graduated high school. Yay, Jackie! She is our artist. She's going on to USM in the fall, and she's gonna study art and maybe teaching, we think. And she is going to bring so much to the people that she sees there. She understands so much about what it's like to live with things and live with mental illness and anxiety and those things. Excited for that. And Matthew lives with OCD every single day, every part of his day, but he has a full-time job this summer as a summer camp counselor. He just finished his 10th year in high school. He's got his driving permit, and he is going to be doing the emergency medical technician program at Sanford High School in the fall and go on to become a pediatric physician's assistant someday. That's our plan, that's his plan, and I'm excited for him for that. I can honestly say that I don't know where we would be if we had not had the providers in our life through Maine Behavioral Health. If we hadn't had people who listened to us. It has not always been easy. There haven't always been providers that listened. It happens, it's life, you get it, but you don't give up and you don't lose sight of what the ultimate goal is, which is to have healthy, happy human beings in your life. And we've got that, and we're lucky and we're fortunate, and I understand that. So thank you all so much for your donations and for helping to be able to keep these services for my husband and my children and everybody else in our community. They need it, I see it, and I appreciate it. So thank you.